My wife left without a word. 10 years later, her son asked me for a job. I almost didn't open the file. It was late. I had already gone through 24 intern applications, most of them predictable. Straight A students from good families, eager to pad their resumes and put something impressive under the work experience section. I was half a cup of coffee away from calling it a night when I saw the name. Liam Whitaker. I froze. It wasn't an uncommon last name. That was what I told myself at first. But the minute I opened the file and saw his photo, my stomach tightened. 16. Brown hair, sharp jawline, the kind of smile that leaned just slightly to the left. My hands hovered over the keyboard. He looked exactly like her. Exactly like me. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. 10 years had passed since Eva left. Not a word. Not a message. One morning she just wasn't there anymore. No clothes in the closet. No toothbrush. Just a folded letter on the kitchen counter that said, "I need something else. Please don't look for me." I never did. I let her go because I thought she'd already left long before she walked out the door. There was a distance between us for months. Maybe years. I told myself that whatever life she found, she deserved it. I just never thought she'd keep this part of it a secret. I scrolled through Liam's file again. School awards. Robotics club. Volunteered at a summer reading program. GPA 3.9. Under household contact, her name was there. Eva Whitaker. No mention of a father. No second emergency contact. I leaned forward and reread it all, as if looking harder would change something. But the math added up too neatly. Liam was born 7 months after she left. His birthday was circled in red on the school transcript header. I knew what that meant. She had been pregnant when she disappeared. And she never told me. I closed the file and sat in the dark for a while. My office overlooked the street, and I could hear the distant sound of a delivery truck backing into the loading bay. My reflection in the window looked older than I felt. Tired eyes. Lines on my forehead I didn't remember earning. The next morning, I called HR and asked to sit in on the interview. I told them I liked to stay involved with our youth programs. It wasn't a lie. But it wasn't the whole truth either. When Liam walked into the room, my breath caught in my throat. He looked taller in person. Nervous, but composed. He wore a navy dress shirt and shook hands firmly, the way someone had clearly taught him. He had no idea who I was. I introduced myself as Mr. Carter, CEO of the firm. His eyes widened slightly. He thanked me for taking the time to meet him. The whole time he talked, I listened for pieces of her. How he pronounced certain words. The way he scratched his temple when thinking. Even the way he sat. Back straight, one foot tapping under the table, reminded me of Eva on the edge of a difficult conversation. And yet he said nothing that hinted at me. No questions. No hesitation. Just a polite, driven young man trying to earn a spot. By the time he left the room, I knew the truth. He didn't just not recognize me. He had never even been told I existed. I sat at my desk long after Liam left the room, staring at the door like it might open again. Like maybe he'd forgotten something and would walk back in, tilt his head, and say something that gave me a sliver of recognition. But it never opened. I replayed the interview in my head. Every word, every gesture. The way he thanked me. The way he smiled when I asked about his interest in programming. It wasn't forced. It was genuine. He was just a kid trying to earn an opportunity. That was the part that hurt most. He was good. Sharp. Focused. All the things I had hoped I'd one day pass on. And he had no clue who I was. I went home that night without turning on the radio. The silence in the car wrapped around me like a second skin. The city lights blurred past the windshield, and I felt like I was driving underwater. My thoughts were loud enough to fill the quiet. I made dinner but didn't eat it. I opened the bottle of scotch Eva had given me for our 3rd anniversary. It had been sitting in the cabinet untouched for years, dusty and forgotten. I poured 2 fingers into a glass, then stared at it until the ice melted. I kept asking myself why. Why didn't she tell me? Why raise him alone? Why take that choice away from me? The next morning, I walked into the office early. HR emailed a short list of interns we were planning to onboard. Liam was on it. I didn't take him off. I couldn't. He earned it, and I didn't want to be the kind of man who punished a kid for a lie someone else told. But I added a note: assign him to my department. If I couldn't be his father, maybe I could still be something. When he showed up for his first day, he was wearing a lanyard and carrying a notepad like he meant business. I nodded as he walked past my office. He smiled at me, like a stranger would. I gave him small tasks at first. Debug this, organize that. He finished everything ahead of schedule. He was hungry to prove himself. I started giving him more. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched him more than I should have. Not to scrutinize. To memorize. The way his fingers flew across a keyboard. The way he chuckled under his breath when something finally worked. I even saw him once standing by the vending machine, laughing at something on his phone, shoulders relaxed and free. He had no idea the man who was watching him wasn't just his boss. He was careful with his words, but kind. Thoughtful. He reminded me of how I used to be before everything went sideways. One afternoon, I walked by his desk and caught a glimpse of his phone background. It was a picture of him and Eva. They were standing on a pier, both holding cones of melting ice cream. She looked older, but not by much. Same eyes. Same gentle tilt of her head. She had her arm around him. I froze for a second. He noticed and turned the phone over. Sorry, I said. Didn't mean to stare. No worries, he said. That's my mom. She looks happy. Yeah, he smiled. She's the best person I know. I nodded once and walked away before he could see my eyes. Because the truth was, I didn't know if I wanted her to be happy anymore. Not after what she took from me. The longer Liam stayed, the harder it became to separate what I knew from what he didn't. He was thriving. Everyone liked him. He brought fresh ideas into meetings, stayed late without being asked, and took criticism like someone twice his age. A few of the senior engineers started calling him the quiet storm. I could tell he liked that. He was already becoming part of the team, and every day, I watched from a distance, pretending I was just another mentor. But I wasn't. I started doing things I hadn't done in years. I looked at old photos. Ones of Eva and me before everything unraveled. I found one from a weekend trip we took to the lake, back when we still held hands without thinking about it. She was barefoot in the photo, standing on the dock with her hair caught in the wind. I looked so young beside her. Stupidly hopeful. We had talked about kids on that trip. What names we liked. What we'd teach them. What we'd do differently from our own parents. I had forgotten how real that conversation felt at the time. Now it felt like a lie. One Friday, after everyone else had gone, Liam was still in the office finishing up a presentation. I pretended to be doing emails while I listened to the faint sound of his fingers tapping the keys. Eventually, he stood in my doorway. "Hey, Mr. Carter?" he asked. "Yeah. I was wondering if I could ask you something." "Sure." He stepped inside, hesitated, then sat across from me. "This might be weird," he said. "But how do you know if someone is telling you the full truth? Like, in life. Not just work." That caught me off guard. What brought that on? He scratched the back of his head, like he was debating whether to say more. "I asked my mom once why she never got married," he said. "She told me it just never felt right after the first time. That she'd been in love once, and that was enough." I nodded slowly. "She ever tell you anything about him?" "Not really. Just that he was kind. And that it ended because... I don't know. Something changed." I tried to keep my face still. Maybe he didn't want to be found. Or maybe someone made that choice for him. Liam looked confused for a second, then nodded. "I guess." He stood to leave, then paused again. You ever lose someone you thought you'd have forever? I looked at him, and for a moment, the weight of everything sat right between us. Yeah, I said. I did. He offered a small smile, then left. I stared at the door long after it closed. I hadn't expected the guilt. Not just over what she had done, but over what I hadn't. I had never tried to find her. Never sent a letter. Never reached out to anyone who might have known where she went. I told myself it was about respecting her decision. About dignity. But maybe it had been pride. Or fear. I poured myself another coffee and stared at the blank document on my screen. I didn't know what I was going to do next. But I knew one thing for sure. Liam deserved the truth. Even if it shattered whatever he thought he knew. I didn't sleep much that weekend. I kept staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had the right to say anything at all. 10 years is a long time to stay silent. A long time to convince yourself that maybe silence is kinder. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw his face. That half-smile he gave when something finally clicked. The way he rubbed his hands together when nervous. Things I used to do. Things I still did. By Sunday night, I decided I would tell him. Not everything at once, but something. Enough to plant the truth. I rehearsed the conversation in my head over and over. Different versions, different openings. All of them ended with him looking at me the same way he looked at Eva, with trust. Monday came, and I nearly backed out. He was busy helping another team run some tests, and I stood in the doorway watching him laugh with one of the junior developers. He looked like he belonged. Like this place gave him a purpose. I almost walked away. But then he looked over and waved. Hey, Mr. Carter, I saved you a seat in the conference room. So I stayed. After the meeting, I asked if he had a few minutes. Sure, he said, following me into my office. I closed the door, but not all the way. I didn't want it to feel too serious. He sat across from me again, that same calm expression. What's up? I leaned forward. I wanted to talk to you about something a bit personal. His eyebrows lifted slightly, but he nodded. All right. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Do you ever wonder why your mom never talked much about your dad? He blinked, caught off guard. Then shrugged. Sometimes. But I figured he left. Or maybe she left him. I never really pressed her. She always changed the subject. What if there's more to it? He frowned. What do you mean? I hesitated, then reached for my desk drawer. I had printed out a photo that weekend. One from years ago. It was the lake trip, the one where Eva and I had laughed until our cheeks hurt. I slid it across the desk. He picked it up slowly. That's my mom. His voice dropped slightly. And you? That's me. He stared at it longer than I expected. Then back at me. Wait. I gave him time. His eyes moved between the photo and my face. You could almost see the wheels turning, see the past rewriting itself in real time. Is this real? Yes. How long have you known? Since the day you walked into the interview. He leaned back in the chair, clutching the photo like it was something fragile. She never said anything. I know. Why? That's something I've asked myself every day since I saw your name on that file. He didn't speak. Just kept staring at the photo. His hands were shaking slightly. I didn't want to do this now, not like this. But I knew it had to happen. And I knew I had to be the one to start it. I'm not trying to blow up your life, I said. I just thought you deserved to know the truth. He set the photo down gently. I need some time, he said. Of course. He stood up and left without another word. And I sat there, listening to the click of the door. Not sure if I had just started to build something. Or if I had finally broken everything. The office felt different after that. Liam didn't quit, but he didn't speak to me either. He still showed up on time, still completed every task, still sat in on meetings with that calm, quiet energy. But something had changed. He never stopped by my office. Never waved when we crossed paths in the hallway. He just worked. And I let him. I gave him the space he asked for. I didn't check in. I didn't follow up. I told myself it was the right thing to do, even if it killed me to keep my distance. I had broken something, or maybe I had just exposed a break that had always been there. 2 weeks passed. Then, late one afternoon, I came back from a meeting and found a sticky note on my desk. "Can we talk?" I sat with that note for a long time before walking down the hall. He was in the break room, seated at the far end of the table, arms crossed, eyes down. I took the chair across from him, careful not to crowd him. He didn't speak right away. "I didn't show my mom the photo," he said. I nodded. I didn't know what to say to her. "Or to you." "That's fair." He looked up. "But I talked to my aunt. My mom's sister." She confirmed it. A small silence settled between us. She said she begged my mom to tell me years ago, but she wouldn't. Said it would just confuse things. That it was better for me to have a simple answer. His jaw tightened. "She said your name once." I was too young to remember. I took a breath. "Liam, I didn't know about you. Not until I saw your file. I would have been there. Every day. I need you to understand that." He nodded, slowly. "I believe you." Another long pause. I always wondered why she looked so sad when we passed the city limits. We never stopped here. Never even drove through. She always took the long way around. I tried to picture her, older, looking over her shoulder while driving past the skyline. It felt like a scene from someone else's life. "Why didn't she tell me?" he asked. "I don't know. She always said I looked like her dad. But I guess that was just easier to say." He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. "I don't even know what I'm supposed to feel." "You don't have to know yet. Take your time." He looked at me again. "Why didn't you try to find her?" "I did. At first. Then I convinced myself it wasn't my place. That she didn't want to be found. That maybe chasing her would only make things worse. That ever feel true?" "No. Not really." He nodded again, slower this time. "I don't know if I want a relationship. That's okay. But I don't want this to be fake, either. You're not just some guy anymore." I felt something shift in my chest. "We can start wherever you need," I said. "As slow as you want." He stood up, pushed in the chair, and gave me the faintest smile. "Okay." He left without another word, but the weight in my chest felt lighter. That night, I didn't drink. I didn't dig through old boxes or reread letters that never should have been sent. I just sat at the table, alone in the quiet, knowing for the first time in a long time that something might actually be starting instead of ending. The weeks that followed were filled with cautious steps. Liam still worked in my department, but now there was something else beneath the surface. A quiet awareness. Not tension, exactly. More like a current neither of us could name. We spoke more often, mostly about work at first. Then other things started to slip through. One afternoon, he asked if I liked baseball. I told him I used to. Used to go with my dad when I was his age. He asked who my team was. I asked who his was. It wasn't much, but it was a thread. And we kept pulling on it. He stopped by my office a little more often. Once he brought me a coffee, said he wasn't sure how I took it but figured black was a safe guess. He was right. Another time, he asked me if I'd always wanted to run a company. I told him the truth. That I had no idea what I wanted when I was his age. That I just kept moving forward and tried not to look back. It felt strange saying that out loud, considering everything. One Friday evening, just before closing up, he stood in my doorway again. No coffee. No notepad. Just him. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. Of course. "Did you love her?" I didn't need to ask who he meant. "I did," I said. "Very much." "What happened?" "She changed." Or maybe I did. We stopped talking about the future. Then one day, the future disappeared. He looked down for a second. Did you know she was pregnant? No. Would you have stayed? Without hesitation. I would have been there from day one. He nodded, absorbing that. Did you hate her for it? I paused before answering. I hated what she took from me. I hated the silence. But no, I never hated her. Not really. He seemed to sit with that for a while. Do you think she'll be mad if I talk to you more? I don't want to come between you and her. He shook his head. I think she's scared. That if I knew, I'd leave her. Would you? No, he said quietly. But I might see her differently. That's what she's afraid of. It's okay to see people differently, Liam. Sometimes it's the only way we grow. He looked up at me, like he wanted to believe that. You want to grab lunch tomorrow? He asked. It was casual. Barely a change in tone. But I felt the ground shift beneath me. Yeah, I'd like that. There was a small, nervous smile on his face when he left my office. That night, I stared at the same ceiling I'd looked at for years. But it felt different now. Lighter somehow. Like the silence was still there, but it didn't echo as loud. The next day, we met at a small diner 2 blocks from the office. He was already seated when I arrived, flipping through a menu, looking every bit like a kid who had no idea how much had changed in the last month. We talked about food, school, his plans for college. Nothing heavy. But I watched the way he relaxed around me. The way he leaned in when I spoke. The way he asked questions, genuinely curious. I kept wondering if this is how it would have been. If things had gone differently. And I realized something. It still could be. Not the same way. Not as father and son from birth. But something real. Something honest. Something that could last. We started meeting for lunch once a week. Sometimes it was the diner. Sometimes we walked to the sandwich shop by the water. I let him talk. About classes, his friends, little frustrations at work. He asked for advice more often now. Small things. Career paths. How to tell if someone's being honest. What to do when you feel like you're falling behind everyone else your age. And sometimes, he asked about me. Not in a deep way. Just curious questions here and there. When did you first know what you wanted to do? Did you always live in the city? Did you ever get in trouble when you were younger? I gave him the real answers. Not the cleaned-up versions. I told him I messed up a lot. That I learned things the hard way. That most people don't have everything figured out, no matter how old they are. He always listened. Not out of obligation, but interest. That's how I knew we were building something. Still, I hadn't seen Eva. Not since the photo. I didn't even know where she lived now. I figured Liam wasn't ready for that part yet. Or maybe he was trying to protect her. Maybe both. But she knew. I was sure of it. Liam had told her something. Maybe not everything. Maybe just enough to make her anxious. And she was choosing silence again. One evening, about a month after that first lunch, I was locking up the office when I saw a figure outside. She was standing by the sidewalk, hands tucked into her coat. Her hair was shorter now. Her eyes tired. But I knew her instantly. Eva. I didn't move. She didn't either. Finally, I stepped outside. The wind was cold, but I barely felt it. "Hi," I said. "Hi." We stood there, 10 feet apart, like we were waiting for the other to flinch first. "I heard you've been talking to him," she said quietly. I nodded. "I didn't come to fight," she added. "Neither did I." She glanced away, like she couldn't decide whether to speak or leave. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. She swallowed. "I was scared." "You think that's a weak answer, but it's the truth." "You weren't scared when you left." "I was," she said. "I was terrified. I didn't know how to stay. I didn't know how to explain myself. I thought, if I vanished, it would hurt less for both of us. It didn't. I know. He's a good kid, I said. He is. And he deserved to know the truth. I know that too. We stood in silence again. You think he hates me now? She asked. No. But I think he's still trying to understand why. She closed her eyes for a second. Then opened them and stepped closer. Are you angry? I was. And now? Now I just want to move forward. For him. She nodded, and her voice cracked when she said it. So do I. I think we both knew we weren't going to resolve everything right there, on a sidewalk in the cold. But something passed between us anyway. Not forgiveness, not yet. But maybe the beginning of something like it. Before she left, she said one more thing. Thank you for being kind to him. You didn't have to. I did, I said. He's my son. And this time, she didn't look away. We didn't speak again after that night. Not right away. Eva disappeared back into her world, and I stayed in mine. But the air between us had shifted. There was no longer the weight of unspoken things pressing down on every moment. Now it felt more like open space. Unresolved, yes, but possible. Liam kept showing up. He finished his internship with glowing reviews from every supervisor. He didn't just do the work, he improved things. Made people pay attention. At the final evaluation, I sat across from him and realized I no longer saw the ghost of a lost future in his face. I saw him for who he was now. His own person. You've got something rare, I told him. A calm center. People trust you without even knowing why. He smiled, a little embarrassed. Thanks. Do you know what you want to do next? College, he said. I'm applying early decision. Computer science. You'll be great at it. He looked up from his notepad, hesitated, then asked, do you think we'll keep in touch? I wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Of course. He nodded like he was testing the sound of that answer in his head. I think I'd like that, he said. When the internship ended, we shook hands in the lobby. It was a formal gesture, but it carried something heavier. I felt it in the way he held my eye for just a second longer than usual. Like he was saying something without needing the words. The next few months passed quickly. I went back to work, kept my head down, but I found myself checking my email a little more often, hoping for a message. Sometimes it came. A link to an article he thought I'd like. A photo from a campus visit. Once, he asked me if I had a favorite book. I sent him a worn paperback the next day, with a note inside. One Saturday morning, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Hi, the message said. It's Liam. You free for lunch? We met at a little Thai place downtown. He had grown out his hair a bit, wore a jacket I was sure he had borrowed from someone older. He looked more like a man than a boy now. He didn't waste time. I asked her, he said. What did she say? She cried. Then she told me everything. And how do you feel? Sad. Confused. A little angry. But mostly I feel like I finally know where I came from. We sat in silence for a minute. I'm glad I met you, he said. I didn't expect to. But I'm glad. Me too. He smiled, this time without any hesitation. I don't know what kind of relationship we're supposed to have, he said. We'll figure it out. No rush. He nodded. When we left, I watched him walk away down the street, hands in his pockets, head tilted up toward the sky. I felt something loosen in my chest, something that had been coiled there for a decade. Later that night, I found the photo again. The one of Eva on the dock. I didn't cry. I just looked at it, nodded once, and put it away for good. Some stories don't end with fireworks. They just stop hurting. And sometimes, if you're lucky, something better takes their place.